software.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello. Nice to see you. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Hakan,
And
and
I'm
this is Kate. Mhm.
Kate. And
Go ahead, speak.
we too are halves of Thorny Games. We are a game studio based out of Washington, D.C. And we make story games often that involve some facet of language and language play. And interestingly, tonight, Hakan, where are you?
Where am I? I am on the third floor of our DC townhouse with two very sleepy cats looking at me, but who graciously have decided to take their activity level down right before this panel started.
Oh, I believe that they will wreak some havoc at some point in the middle of this.
Possible. I'm getting some grumpy looks, like I'm disturbing someone's sleep over there, but we will see. But
Oh, look at that! You can see the
grumpy
stink
cat
eye
over
from across the room.
there.
Oh, he's already
Right.
coming over.
Yep. So
I'm in the same place, and the only reason why I bring this up and that it's notable is that this is the third year that I think you and I have done BPC online, and in each of those years we have been in different locations, different parts of the country, and now for the first time we are in one place.
wow, I had forgotten that. That's funny.
It was momentous for me, I guess.
All right. Mhm.
Well, welcome to the panel, everyone. And there's very much a reason why our cat Tarsky is so very relevant right now. The handsome tuxedo cat that he is. This is a panel titled "Animals Who Play and Design Games." And the description is that in this panel, we're here to talk about and marvel at some of the research around how non-human animals play. And then we'll also talk about some excellent games that feature animals, and then potentially the opportunities and challenges in designing for human-animal play.
As this topic's a little outside of our normal wheelhouse, we usually make games about language and or topics like that. But we both have a really deep love of animals, and this has been a topic that we've been interested in a while. So we're excited to talk to you all about it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to just really being able to revel in some great examples of animal play, share some interesting books and resources to dive deeper, and then also hopefully just watch some cool videos of animals in play. We should kick off with an icebreaker.
Sure. Do you have one in mind?
Yes, I do have. Hakan, can you tell me a memorable moment when you have seen animals in play in your life?
I think the one that really stands out to me, because I think I've known a lot of individual animals who love to play, like Tarsky will very aggressively ask for his rainbow string every night that we must play with. But one of the more surprising ones I remember seeing, because I hadn't really seen this behavior like outside of mammals that often, was when we went to New Zealand and we got to meet a lot of the Kia birds in the South Island of New Zealand. If y'all haven't gotten a chance to meet these birds yet, they're alpine parrots, and they're just incredibly curious birds, right? Was it very cheeky? Cheeky is the word that gets used a lot about them. And I remember even like at some point we had stopped at like maybe at like a toll or something like that. Like we were traveling in the van, and one of them just kind of like popped down to the floor next to the door of the van, and we opened the door, and he just kind of like hops in, right? Like, and would gladly kept going in and just exploring, had the driver not like told it to please get out. Um, but the memory I have of them, which is my favorite, was that at some point we were at like kind of like a rest stop, like a little clearing, and there was a little sign, and because you saw these signs like "Don't feed the Kia" everywhere, right? Like because they're so social with people, they'll just come up and people would be very tempted to feed them. But this one also had like a "Don't feed the Kia," but it additionally had some suggestions on what you should consider doing instead, which I thought were very funny. One of which was consider making a little like pyramid of sticks, and like the Kia will go and investigate it because they're like very curious, playful animals. And just like go up. So there's like these instructions on like this sign. It's like
Make your stick pyramid so
yeah,
you two can play.
yeah, exactly. The Kia will love it. You'll have a great time together, right? Which I just thought was the funniest thing ever. But Kate, do you have a favorite playful animal memory?
Oh wow. So
What an unexpected question. Yeah.
well, it made me really reflect on so many lovely, just playful times with animals too. Um, one that is especially dear to me is when we adopted our cat Bon Bon, and I just remember the first moments of playing together after adopting Bon Bon, or Bon Bon, who you will hopefully see at some other point, is an orange tabby. Both of our cats came from a rescue, and uh, as is typical when you're in I think a shelter, they will take you into a special room when you can go and interact with a particular cat, so you sort of understand your chemistry. And the moment I just locked eyes with Bon Bon and we went into a room and he started kneading and cuddling and what really felt like his own form of play, which often is more soft and tender, except when he wants to play fight like mad with his brother Tartar. Um, that just was the moment that I knew that he was coming home with us, and so that's a dear.
Me's here too. Might
Look at that.
down a little. But
An exhausting day for Bon Bon, I'm sure.
very tiring.
Uh, and then maybe like a really what felt like a profound kind of play, and really more on the line of play as a form of communication, which I feel like is uh, an amazing thing that can happen when you interact with animals. Because when you are playing together, it feels like that you're on the same wavelength. I and you went on an amazing trip to the Galapagos earlier last year, and in that trip we got to do some snorkeling. And while we were snorkeling among some sea turtles, flopping about in the water as you do awkwardly as a human with snorkel gear, and we encountered a sea lion, and the sea lion was desperately curious about us, could swim so much better than us, made sure to show us, but almost like did the reverse boop on the nose, like you'd imagine booping a dog on the nose, booped us on the nose, which was delightful. And it also felt like that there was this moment of communication, of this playful contract that we were making with this animal that was a wild animal in a different place in the ocean, and that was really magical. But yeah, so beautiful examples of animal play. I encourage people in chat to please share your own examples of animal play. But I know that we wanted to spend this time actually talking a bit more about some of what we understand about animal play. All of this should be preferenced again, as we are complete amateurs who've read a few books and a few articles. And in fact, I'd want to refer you to some great resources where you can find out more about this. Uh, One is this book called Kingdom of Play by David Toomey. I recently released What All Bouncing Octopuses, Belly Flopping Monkeys, and Mudsliding Elephants Reveal About Life Itself. Um, there is a great article that is also a summary of this called Do Animals Have Fun? That was in The Atlantic. You can find a Animals at Play BBC series that talks about some of the science and also comes with some great videos of play in action. And then I wanted to plug this book as well, which is called When Animals Dream: The Hidden World of Animal Consciousness by David M. Pena Guzman, which gets into the side of uh, play when we aren't moving, play, at night in our minds, and the observations of animal dreams.
And I'll just add that while what Kate said that we've read some books is technically true, Kate has read the majority of them. So I will hopefully be, I will add in some thoughts as well, but I will be directing many of the questions to Kate, who's delved a lot deeper into this topic than I have. But anyways, I will try to bring my old experience as an Oakland Zoo volunteer to bear as much as I can.
Exactly. You've observed many animals on that. You should explain a little bit more.
Well, we can suffice it to say, if you ever go to the Oakland Zoo and you see the flamingo house right at the entrance, if you went on like a Friday, I think there was a good chance I was the one who cleaned it that day for like a year.
We all needed pandemic hobbies.
Was it? Yep, that was a great pandemic hobby. Like, finally got accepted as a volunteer the first year of the pandemic. Did it until we moved, sadly. But Kate, so to start stuff up, why should we care about animal play or understanding how animals play?
Yeah, I think that one, it is just to better understand animals as beings, animal minds, and that when you study animal play, you really are trying to understand some of the basic cognitive, emotional, the capabilities of animals, what they are, how they think, how they feel, and that is important for understanding the richness of life on Earth, but can also be really revealing about ourselves too. Not to say that all animal all talk of animals needs to go back to us, but we are animal too. As people, and there is, an understanding of our own evolution in play when we understand animals. But it's also just an understanding of the richness of life that's here. When you understand animal play, it also is diving into social dynamics, how that uh, how that is realized and manifest among animals, how they communicate, how they fight, what their hierarchies look like, and it gives an idea into um, where these behaviors might have evolved from. And when we think about understanding ourselves as animals, it also means understanding a deeper story about evolution. I mean, play is one of the most basic behaviors that we do, especially when we're first born. When we're children. Play is so much of what children do, and what is regularly observed, among animals too. And understanding just what are the drives, the motivations, the reasons why we're compelled to do this, I think is a it's just a way to marvel and to better comprehend who we are and what other living things are here. The other thing too, I would say, is that when you start, there's, I'd say, more practical things in understanding animal play. There's the realities of just human and animal interaction too, where humans often tend and care for animals, or will in many other places, or house them, will need to manipulate them, and even you think about animals in zoos, animals in confinement, and understanding how to give them enriching lives and to facilitate fun and excitement and the natural behaviors that would come up in the wild, I think is an important part of understanding animal play, and that goes along with conservation and biodiversity, especially in looking at a variety of animal behaviors. But I think that there's something about play in particular when you see it in animals that is a little bit of a trapdoor for really being able to appreciate animal consciousness and sort of an animal's own um, livelihood, livingness, separate from you as a human. Their own inner life and desires. And when you really recognize animal play, I think it opens a door into just being able to marvel at animals as living beings, and it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the big things for me, I think. Just the more places we can recognize play in the world and see things at play, it somewhat feels good for the soul just to, experience someone else's or something else's play, generally Harvester, especially when he's right there.
Yeah. But I also really think that, when you start to study, even just the question of asking about animal play is a relatively new one. In the study of animals, and certainly in like the history of humans' interaction with animals. And part of that is because it probably, isn't a economically productive question, very broadly. But also part of it too is that to really see animals as playful, deeply playful, is really to acknowledge their inner worlds. And that I think opens up just lots of just important questions and responsibilities and respect, I guess, for animal life, as separate and worthy on its own from human life.
Yeah, and I think even when you're classifying like different levels of research that have gone into different types of animals, I think there's been some amount of work that's gone into animals in captivity, right? Like animals that are being um, farmed or in captivity for different reasons, for either like nourishment or harvesting in some way, or at zoos, right? Like for human enrichment. But the understanding how wild animals play is, I think, particularly mysterious
Yeah.
as far as like what we understand. Um, and so it's why is this a difficult topic to study?
To study animal play, you have to be able to identify animal play. And that actually is tricky when it can be tricky when you come down to it. There's just a lot of subjectivity when you interpret play. One, you need a working definition of what play might be, especially play that it fits an animal. And so all of this, you'll notice like there's so much natural human bias because we anthropomorphize animals so much. But like one working definition of play that one of these books uses in animals is one that comes from an evolutionary biologist, and it calls out play as behavior that is non-functional, voluntary, characterized by repeated but varied movements and occurring only when the animal is healthy, safe, and well fed. That seems quite technical, and we might even quibble a little bit with parts of that definition, and there's more to add to it. But it really kind of goes to show around the subjectivity of what actually is animals at play versus animals responding to other needs that they may have. Is this actually behavior defensive? Is this behavior investigation? Are they hungry? It's interesting when you just look on YouTube, and we've all seen endless videos of what we think are animals playing. But if you kind of put on your skeptical hat and you look at it, you'll see lots of things that, make you, certainly the humans are playful and they can self-report play, and we can understand through communication that, they're approaching this playfully. Um, but we don't have the animal direct experience given to us because of the communication gap. And there's just are many other reasons for these kinds of behavior. So it can be tricky to even know it when you see it. Um, but beyond that, there are uh, real observational challenges too. You can't just you can sit with a camera, and eventually maybe play might happen, certainly among our cats and things like it, but it doesn't necessarily happen on cue, especially out in the wild. And so it's spontaneous and unpredictable. Um, and then um, a lot of play behaviors are complex. Sometimes there's an ambiguity to play at times, especially when you think about play fighting, which comes up a lot, and we'll talk a little bit more about. So knowing, when something is play and when it is something else can also be tricky.
It's funny that you bring up like YouTube videos of animals at play, because I remember back when I worked at YouTube over a decade ago by now, right? Like in the fairly early days of YouTube, one of the things that they had that like my manager's manager would talk about all the time was that like we had to convince people that YouTube was more than dogs on skateboards, right? Like was something that he would say. And it just reminds me of this, that like, oh, actually animals at play. And I mean, while not every dog that has ever, graced the skateboard was doing so voluntarily, I do remember there was like a handful of dogs who really enjoyed it and like kind of figured out how to do it and would like happily go on skateboards voluntarily and like, go downhill. A gentle grade. But yeah, no, but just like the fun in seeing animals at play, I think was something that defined the platform back at the time too.
Yeah.
Well, cool. And so I think you've touched on this a little bit, but understanding play in animals is hard, like you said, for a whole bunch of reasons. But also, like you said, even just what play is in humans is a little hard to put your thumb on. So what is play and what would animal play be, if you have any other color than the definition you provided already?
Yeah. I'm going to step away from. I think we should stick with the specific definition that was given before. But I think the other color that we can say too is just that a lot of play, both in humans and in animals, will imitate really serious kinds of behavior that you find. A serious behavior when it comes to hunting, when it comes to dating, finding a mate, courtship, exploring, fighting, building things, and um, a lot of these are things that are essential for survival. And so when people think about maybe an alternate view on play, or another lens on it, it's really an evolutionary one where they think about play directly as an adaptation, where the drive to play is a neurological one, and that it is an instinct and almost social response that is a part of the story of evolution, and that is sort of wrapped up in its own definition there too. So outside of behavior that is non-functional, voluntary, these other things that we might be able to specifically add to, among healthy, well-fed animals, sometimes observed with repeated and varied movements, fundamentally there is an understanding by some researchers that it is an adaptation, an evolutionary one.
It's interesting too, because like when I think of playing games, like I don't know, I tend to think of evolution as like being in like two paths, right? Like there's genetic evolution, right? Like obviously how our genes evolve and change, but there's also like how ideas evolve and change and govern how we act, right? Kind of like mimetic evolution, or how we would talk about that. And it's funny because like while the specific instantiation of play might be the latter, the drive and the benefits of it that sound like the former from
Yeah.
your characterization, right? Like genetically driven, adaptationally driven. So,
And I hear our cats in the background.
yeah, they're. You can generously call it play.
There's I think that to that same idea, maybe even of evolution, and talk of it, and this will come up potentially later in our discussion, but there's this idea of play being in part the root of culture too, and cultural evolution, and there's an open-endedness both to culture and to play, room for growth, and for uh, the unexpected to happen, and for things to evolve, a flexibility there. And I think that that's an interesting parallel. Um, yeah.
All right. And we have one question from the audience. I think probably be a good one to kind of take now before we go on to our next one. But do you look at animals in the wild differently now that you've studied how or whether they play?
Yeah. I personally do, primarily just because it's just a deeper appreciation of another playful thing. Play is so dear to my life, and so it. I definitely do look at them differently. But the one thing that I'll say is that the play can show up so differently in different species, when we can identify it. And so there's also an interesting distancing, of play. It's like what's fun and playful for me isn't necessarily what's fun and playful for a particular animal. Um, uh, One example that I just have kind of at the ready here is that an observable, bit of play that and behavior that was discussed in one of these books is this idea of the pig flop over. So if you look at lots of piglets, or that it's been observed, you can see piglets that will run around in roughhouse, and you can talk about, sort of like, oh, maybe this running around and roughhousing is, training and is good for physical development and all of that. But they'll also do this behavior where they will just stay very still and then flop over suddenly. The pig flop over, and understanding the flop over is an interesting challenge because it's harder to build a story around adaptation. You can, and that they might mount one around what it means to deal with the unexpected is sort of the story that they at least have painted on top of that. The idea that you do your own kind of form of self handicapping is what they call it, where you might make things harder for yourself, but there's a thrillingness to it. The idea of like the pig might really love just the feeling of falling and then getting back up again and not knowing the uncertainty of what it will happen afterwards. But personally, running and then flopping over right now in my adult body doesn't sound great.
Oh, but
And
you
so,
did that when you were a kid, right? Where you just like pretend all your bones are jelly, like that
yeah,
it is suddenly turned over to it. So
yeah, totally.
definitely sounds like a flop over to me.
That's true. Yeah. Maybe I need to reconnect with the young piglet and myself.
Exactly. Don't we all?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like, especially when we're talking about like how we look at wild animals differently. I think after studying how they play, I mean, I certainly remember the scene in my octopus teacher where like the octopus is playing, right? Like, and I don't know, probably one of the more impactful scenes in that movie I felt, or that documentary.
Yeah.
Definitely impacted me and how I think of um, octopuses, octopi, octopodes. I
We'll
don't
accept them all.
remember. Take them all. All right, cool. Um, and so I think you talked a little bit about the flop over and like different types of animal play that we understand. But what else do we understand about how animals play?
Well, I think there's the understanding of why,
Mm,
and there certainly is a story that can be told around development and how play helps you practice and rehearse for the things that you will encounter in life. And play is observed markedly more in juveniles, I think, across species. Play continues into adulthood, as we are examples, and then also true of animals. But there's a lot of play when you're young, and the idea there is that it's skill development. Maybe what by hunting, by fighting, by escaping predators, by playing in situations that aren't actually dangerous, you will be ready when the time comes. And similarly, you can argue, and it is argued that there's actual brain development that happens there too, especially when it comes to social play. The idea of your brain changing around the interactions that you have from other young animals in play together. The negotiations you have to do, the challenges you encounter, and along with it, there's the social benefits of play. We know them as people, but especially among animals that need to rely on specific types of social bonds to work together. You're bonding with the pack, or you're learning what your social hierarchy is and the norms are in order to maintain cohesion. But all of that is very much functional view on play, and at least one of these articles kind of really calls out in a really correct way that I think is that maybe there is just something inherently fun about it, and that there is fun as a virtue, as something that is sacred and wonderful and special that might be true of consciousness of certain kinds, that is separate from the stories we might want to tell about the function of development or of adaptation. So lots of people have different takes on this.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's always interesting to think of where we're trying to like ascribe some sort of meaning or purposefulness behind the thing, or like just kind of you know, concrete utility to an activity when like maybe that's just you know us trying to find reason where there is no reason in some way. Or um, cool. And so we talked about animal play. Well, I'm saying we very generously to myself, but you've talked a lot about animal play, I think, as a whole, right? And we had like a few concrete examples where we talked about flopping pigs and playful birds and things like that. But it'll probably be helpful to just talk a little bit on different varieties of animal play, so we can kind of see different classes, or like give some concrete examples of like what different varieties of animal play are. So what are different varieties of animal play?
Maybe one to start off with might be solitary play, and that is animals playing by themselves in different ways, and uh, the great treasure trove of what you'll find on the internet around animals joyriding or animals sliding down hills is a great example of solitary play. So many examples here, and what's interesting is just that many different kinds of animals do it, and if you wanted to put on an explanation of why they do it, in the idea of adaptation or of learning to adapt for the unexpected, there sort of is a story you can tell around the exhilaration of what a slow, controlled fall might look like. The same way that a slide is fun for people. It has the problem, all of this, when you start trying to explain play, that it feels very unfun to explain. But then once you see it, it's utterly delightful.
Sliding down the gentle grade sounds exhilarating.
Oh, right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I thought I might show a couple of examples here, and I'm going to get my screen share function going. Um, let's see this local example. Hopefully, people can see this. Maybe I'll try and replay.
Oh, too soon, too soon.
I know. So we're located here in Washington, D.C., and so this is an example of pandas that used to be part of the Smithsonian National Zoo, uh, sliding down a snowy hill. on one particular winter's day. I think it made national news at the time. BBC News.
That they slid down the yeah.
But you can
So
watch
funny.
them continue to walk up the grade and go back and do it. So that's one example. Look at that tumble. Oh, so good.
That was cute.
That looks like the exhilaration of a slow controlled fall to me. So another example I might show. Let's look.
For those of you not in Washington, D.C., we have still not adapted to the fact that we don't have pandas in this town. It's quite bad.
Okay, well, I am obligated to show this video of a very eager lab. Oh, belly first sliding down that hill. And then you see the turnaround and right back up again. Might as well go right back up and do it.
What a goof.
But this one is interesting, especially. It's grainy, but it received quite a bit of attention because it also involves some object manipulation. Let me see if I can have this video to share. This is a video out of the window. What looks to be a crow sliding down a roof.
Just snowboarding.
Snowboarding down. You gonna go again? You gonna go again? Wee. Delightful. And that continues on for some time. But all of those end up being examples of animals joyriding, solitary play in animals, and just the variety of animals that you see that kind of play and different kinds of solitary play in is really neat. So another is social play, and play fighting is a great example here. Common behavior also observed among many different animal species, and it can often look aggressive. You'll see movements there around wrestling, chasing, biting, but the idea is that this doesn't cause real harm, and that there's some understanding among the animals at play that that this is in the special play space, and that they are safe in doing these behaviors, and not actually a fight. There's stories you can also tell around, sort of like the role in learning that we talked about, social structures and social bonding that might come for it. One item that's called out is also sort of emotional and stress management, especially among domestic cats that might engage in gentle play fighting. I know we've probably seen a little bit of uptick in play fighting, given this last year where our house has been in upheaval. We have a new little person that has joined us, a baby, and so now I think our cats are the ones needing to deal with that, and maybe that is coming out in play fighting. Also noted is that it is something that is really regularly observed among young animals, but it does continue into adulthood in certain species. So let me show you a couple of videos of animals play fighting. There's magpies wrestling and play fighting. And we also see them observing in a different kind of animal play here, which is play with objects, playing with tools, movement. You can understand why this is functional in some sense, but they're they're also clearly enjoying themselves. Let me stop sharing. I think there's a lot more that we can say here, but I know that we're low on time. I think maybe a couple other things to just call out in terms of types of play. It's very interesting to note the different kinds of behaviors that you can observe among dogs. Dogs have a very special play bow. I think people know it. They get on their haunches and they put their butt in the air. And this is a really unambiguous symbol of play that dogs are communicating to one another. And that is neat to see, and often will like beget lots of other playful behaviors that we all know well: chasing and running, tug of war, fetch, things like it. Um, but the other thing that I thought that was really neat in the study of all of this is uh, the idea of play as the basis of culture, as one of the roots of culture. Um, and one of the things that this book Kingdom of Play calls out is that a lot of behaviors that might satisfy the criteria for play also satisfy the criteria for culture and observed culture. The idea of athletic competition, music, dance. This comes up a lot, especially in studying birds and their bird behaviors. You can ask yourself, like, what's the difference between a really functional bird call and something more than that? And there is observed bird song and undirected bird song, birds singing to themselves alone, and whether or not this is play, is a question that we can ask. But this book answers it in the affirmative, and then might also say that it's potentially an observation of culture too.
And so, since we're a little low on time, what are some story games that feature animals in interesting ways?
Yeah. There's a list that we'll power through here and maybe give a little bit of color. So you can join me in this, Hakan. I have to call out Cat by John Wick, primarily because it's the first story game that we ever played.
A long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. Games on Demand. Cats that have secret lives where they protect their humans and families from lots of supernatural threats.
Mm-hmm. And there's The Warren, which is a role-playing game where all the players are rabbits dealing with dangerous social dynamics in a realistic environment. Very survival, kind of horror. When you're a bunny, it turns out a lot of things are very scary, justifiably so.
Yeah, Wander Home, animal-centric, this pastoral fantasy RPG, really, and also being able to progress story through different kinds of animal traits.
Mm-hmm. And Mouse Guard, which is also based on the comic series. Once again, very anthropomorphized, something like that. Give or take a syllable. But where you also play as, mice who are very people-like, but also which do have, their own culture and rules and, mouse rules.
Yeah. And very quickly, Root RPG, Bunnies and Burrows, and a few others by Tim Hutchings. I think at least one of these is LARP, right?
Yeah, I think both are LARPs. Yeah, A Crow Funeral and You're a Fucking Butterfly. Yeah, I remember A Crow Funeral was a Golden Cobra one year. Yeah, wonderful games.
And maybe one thing just to call out too, just among all these games and the natural tendencies of us is that anthropomorphizing animals is just it's hard not to do, because we see the world through ourselves. And I think that appreciating the differences between people and animals is one of the things that I also walk away with after having done some of the study. And the other thing to call it there is just both the study of animal play, maybe even some of the topics of how we look at animals in games too. A lot of that is around certain kinds of animals, or it's often potentially biased towards animals that are more interesting or useful to humans in some way. And so maybe it's because of their aesthetic appeal. We can understand them. There's some familiarity and cultural significance. But there's a set of animals that we have much less study of and understanding of, and that are often come from a gulf of sort of fear and misunderstanding around them. Um, and the idea of being able to look at play as an inroad to better understanding them is really interesting to me.
I think that it's so fascinating that like the octopus features a lot in like when you look up like examples of play, just given how different they are, neurologically and cognitively than humans or pretty much all the other animals we would talk about are. And so a behavior that's very much observed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that gives us about 5 minutes left. So if there are any last questions, please drop them now. But while we wait for those, Kate, do you have any wish lists about what you'd like to see in terms of games you want to play or make about animals?
Yeah, I'd love obviously more animal communication games, games that allow us to think about what it would mean to communicate with animals in a deeper way. That clearly resonates just with the kind of things that we make here at Thorny Games. Um, I I love a series of young adult books called The Animorphs, where it is kids battling, aliens through a special kind of morphing technology that allows them to become animals. And in that book, you really kind of get to see a glimpse, in a young adult fashion about the particular horrors and joys of trying to inhabit animal bodies with a human mind, and I would love to play that out more deeply. And then I would also just love games that help to kind of bridge this bias and help us empathize with animals that often will seem more alien to us, that aren't the dogs, the cats, that are things that are farther away from our understanding, that lead really different lives.
We have a very good friend who compulsively feeds the squirrels around town, and I think always has nuts in his pockets. And I very much would like a game that I could play with squirrels. I think that would be a lot of fun. And because wild animals need to be wild, and I feel like you could play a little something with a squirrel. Like they're kind of exposed enough to people, or a pigeon, ones that coexist very closely with humans.
True. And I think that this also brings up, like, what are some of the ideas of things that are part of designing a game both for or with animals, and certainly like safety for all parties involved, clearly. Um, Respect for the animal in some way. They should respect its welfare, um, its comfort, and its wildness, if it has it. One thing in this way too that I found interesting is really calling out just the different biologies of animals you might be designing for. There was a neat article in the New York Times recently about designing games, mobile games, or video games for birds, and they're uh, they call out that birds are often interacting with things through their tongues, and the idea of how to make screens more adaptable to tongue navigation is something you think about if you are trying to build something directly for birds.
All right, and I think we're getting our time warnings, so I think we're wrapping up. All right. Well,
yeah.
Any other parting thoughts?
Animal. I encourage people to go and check out some of these books if this is interesting to you. If you want to read it more, I found it really useful just as someone who uh, thinks a lot about play, where play is meaningful to me, and then just have I'm someone with deep relationships with animals, and this made me appreciate them more.
And if you have any other thoughts around animal play, it's something that we continue to think about a lot. So please share your thoughts with us. Cactus at Thorny Games. So always love to talk to folks about topics like this. So please drop us a line. All right. Well, it was wonderful talking.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, folks.
Bye-bye.